welcome back to this week's episode of Outside the Arena. I'm Griffin, joined alongside my co-host Devin Bernstein, and it's football season. I mean, I know, we had the national championship wrap up this past week. Michigan Wolverines, congratulations to them through all the adversity, through all the Connor Stallions sign stealing scandals. They just, dominated every opponent that was put in front of them towards the end. So congrats to the Wolverines. Nick Saban retired. Crazy news. The NFL had some crazy coaching changes. And of course, the NFL playoffs kick off today with Browns at Texans. I believe 4 hours from now, from when we're filming this. This will be out. I'm going to try to get this out. So hopefully you're watching this as a little preview for the NFL playoffs. We'll put the timestamps below, but we are going to start off with college football today and recap the latest from what's been one of the craziest weeks, it feels like, probably in college football history, with the GOAT retiring. But we're going to talk about the national championship first. Michigan defeated Washington 34-13. Felt like they were in control for basically most of the game. I mean, they really, Donovan Edwards came out, had two super long runs for touchdowns in the first half, in the first quarter. Michigan kind of slowed down the mid quarter, second and third, only had 6 points, and felt like Washington was right there. They were kind of within one score for a while, had a chance. Penix missed some throws. He didn't play great. And then towards the end, Michigan just pulled through, winning the national title, their first outright since like 1948, I think. Devin, your thoughts on, this game, but also just the season that the Wolverines had?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought from the game was just like the line from Michigan on both sides of the ball, but particularly the offensive line really just dominated this game. You talked about the Donovan Edwards, touchdowns. Blake Corum obviously had a great game as well. Excuse me, sorry, I'm a little bit sick today, as is Griffin, so we're both fighting through to put out a great podcast. But yeah, besides that, like you said, Penix didn't have necessarily the best game. I don't think it was, to be honest, I think he put some of this stuff on tape, but hadn't in a lot of the big games.
Yeah.
So, I think this was a performance he was kind of capable of, especially against a great defense, but I personally didn't see it coming. Um, you know, just a complete struggle. I thought he would have some success. But besides that, Michigan was just, they were the most consistent team this year. McCarthy isn't necessarily this incredible college quarterback, but he's a good player. He's got a good arm. He's got good legs. He makes good decisions. They have good playmakers. We touched on the line and the running backs, and then this defense is really good. One of the big things I talked about was like I just didn't see Michigan holding Washington to under like 30 points, and they obviously did by a lot. And that was the big difference here, is that Washington's offense, they can move the ball. They got it going a little bit. They had they had an open receiver on a fourth down that could have been, that probably would have been like a 40-yard gain at least.
Yeah.
So, you can't, in a sense, you can't blame, Washington. They obviously had a great season. They clearly were outmatched. And, you do wonder, like, what if Georgia got in? Like, I don't think
Yeah.
they should have. I just think that I do in my heart believe that Georgia probably wins the national championship if they get in.
Yep.
I don't know. It's just interesting. Kind of makes me excited for the 12-team playoff. But this whole year was so chaotic. I kind of like the 4-team playoff. I've talked about my mixed feelings about that. Yeah, those are my thoughts. What are you thinking?
Yeah. I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, I think the difference was the line of scrimmage. We kind of talked about it, I think, last week, where, if Michigan came in, dominated the line of scrimmage, dominates time of possession, they're going to win this game. And, you know, they did. They ran for over 300 yards. Blake Corum, I mean, arguably I don't even think it's arguably the greatest running back in Michigan history. Had capped off his college career with 134 yards, 2 touchdowns, and it was just easy for them. I mean, they just could run the ball with such ease. I mean, JJ was 10 for 18 with 140 passing yards. Like, JJ basically didn't do anything all game. Made some plays here and there, but really didn't have to do too much. I mean, they were just able to run the ball and let their defense play. Their defense, obviously, I mean, they've got so many talented players on there. Chris Jenkins, Will Johnson, who seems like has kind of cemented himself as the top corner in next year's draft. You also have that linebacker whose name I'm forgetting, who just declared for the draft. Is it Junior Colson? Yeah, Junior Colson. Really
Yeah.
good player as well. So they got a lot of talent on that defense. And at the end of the day, Washington, like, I think the opportunities were there. Like, I think Michigan definitely dominated them, especially, on offense, the line of scrimmage. But like, they had their chances. They had that, the running back dropped that one pass. Penix overthrew Odunze on that one deep ball. Like, they definitely had chances to be in this game and flip the momentum. And it just wasn't one of those days for Michael Penix. You know, I'm sure he was beat up obviously towards the end of the game, but it seemed like once kind of his injuries started to affect him, whatever they may be, it was kind of too late at that point, anyways. Um, you know, they didn't run the ball. They couldn't run the ball, Washington. So, it just put a lot of pressure on Penix and ultimately wasn't able to capitalize. And obviously, I mean, I think we can kind of transition here. This Washington program, from the highest highs to the lowest lows, you go from in the national championship, then you lose. That basically that entire offense of Penix, Odunze, Polk, all those guys are going to be going to the NFL. And then to make things worse, Kalen DeBoer, the new successor to Nick Saban in Alabama, who retires. Crazy news. There was a bunch of guys rumored for that position. Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkisian. They both put out like hype videos. Mike Norvell got himself a new contract. So it was a good opportunity for some of these coaches to get paid even more than they already make. But ultimately, it is Kalen DeBoer heading to Alabama. Some Washington guys have entered the portal already. Some Alabama guys have entered the portal already. Obviously, Washington going to be in a really tough spot for next season. But your thoughts overall, both on Saban retiring, but also kind of the trajectory of these two programs going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same reaction basically everyone had to the Saban retirement. Like, wow, like that was pretty surprising. I mean, obviously he was getting up there, but didn't expect, a lot of people were kind of making fun of Coach K because he had the
Yeah.
whole drawn out retirement tour, and Saban didn't really want to do that, which I kind of respect. Obviously Saban's like the goat of just builds a program so easily, done it in multiple places, um, builds up NFL talent, develops them, everyone knows how good of a coach Saban is. What I will say is I'm very interested to see how DeBoer does. He very quickly turned around this Washington program, but it's going to be hard. There were a lot of guys that transferred away already. Saban kind of retired, and a lot of these guys were kind of just left in the dry without like a named successor. It's not like
Yeah.
they knew going into the season this was Saban's last year and they're going to bring in someone or whatever that Saban signs off on. Like they don't, I guess I assume Saban signs off on the whatever, signs off on the hire, but like they don't know that, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
feel like he passed down the torch to anyone necessarily. So I'm interested to see how that goes. I certainly think DeBoer is a great coach and he'll figure it out. But yeah, I was I of all the sports news we got this week, this was probably the most surprising. Also, I don't know, this like just happened as we're filming. The Bills game's now on Monday at 4:30
Yeah.
because
I
of
saw that.
weather.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's another thing. But what are your thoughts on the Saban thing?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like, he's the GOAT. He's done it so long. I mean, some of these teams, the talent he produces, obviously, he gets the 5 stars, he gets all these top players, but so do other programs. And Saban's been the guy who's put it, he's proven that he can develop these guys. And, look at, for instance, what's his name? Malachi Nelson, I think, or the USC quarterback, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, like he was a 5 star and he just transferred to Boise State. Like some of
Yeah.
these 5 stars, just because you're a 5 star doesn't mean you're going to be going to the NFL or you're a star. But it feels like with Saban, that was the case most of the time. Like they just had constant talent coming in and out of the building, each year. It was just a new era ready to take over. I mean, we saw it with that wide receiver room for a while when they, had the year of Judy, and Ruggs and Waddle and all of them, and then passing it on to other guys, Devonta Smith. I mean, they just had so much talent for so long. He was really the king of it. You look at all the coaches that coached under him and are now coaching at major programs. That happened for a reason. Nick Saban, I think, one of the best teachers for coaches, but also one of the best teachers for players, obviously. And the success obviously speaks for itself. I am very interested to see how the board does. I think when I saw the news, I think one of my first, after kind of processing it, I was like, one program in the country, if they, it didn't seem like they were going to hire one of their assistant coordinators or their, defensive coordinator or something like that. So I was just like, one program in the country right now is about to be decimated, and Washington, which was already kind of in a fragile state after all these guys were leaving. Not that they were going to be bad, but now it's like, holy cow, like they have to not rebuild the program, but like this is a huge step back for them. And DeBoer, you just go to the national championship and boom, just like that, it's in the Big Ten next year is going to be super competitive. Like Washington next year is probably not going to stack up very high when you're dealing with the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Oregons, the USCs, the Penn States of the world. It's crazy, and the Northwesterns, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the hire's a good hire. I mean, I think DeBoer has earned a lot of respect. The turnaround, I mean, he's still a young coach, which I think is kind of one of my only concerns, is that he doesn't have experience coaching in the SEC. He hasn't really been at as many major programs as some of these other guys. And not that he just was in the national championship, so you can't, like it's not too much of a valid critique, but at the same time, Alabama is different than Washington. The expectations are different, and it's a different culture. And I'm very interested to see how he recruits, how he develops. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating. I'm interested to see who leaves and who stays. It seems like Milrose committed to staying, but then you also have Will Rogers, who was the quarterback that they just brought in at Washington, who just decommitted from there. I was actually scrolling through his Twitter this morning. He was liking some Alabama posts. So like, what's going to happen at quarterback for Alabama next year? You already had Isaiah Bond transfer or enter the portal. Rumors of star safety Caleb Downs as well. So, I think Alabama is probably going to need a year or two to kind of let DeBoer settle in, get his guys in the building, start recruiting, while Saban's kind of guys and people loyal to him transition out. So, it's going to take time, and time will tell with this hire. I think, you've got impossible shoes to fill if you're Kalen DeBoer, but, congrats to him. I mean, just, whatever it was a few years ago coaching, I forget what the team was, but just like, it's crazy how you just go in a matter of seconds to boom, Washington, and then you're the head coach at Alabama. So I know I rambled on for a while there, so I'm going to stop talking, but any additional thoughts, Dev?
Um, no, I think we hit the nail on the head. I'm ready to move on to NFL if you are.
Yeah, perfect. So NFL playoffs kick off today. And as we've kind of done every year on this podcast, we're going to fill out our brackets today. So we'll go one by one. We'll talk through the games for the wild card week, give our predictions. But yeah, I'm going to let you start things off, Dev, since I just talked for a while. So if you want to share your screen and take us through your bracket.
Yeah, sure. All right. So, I'm gonna start, with the first game today. Texans hosting the Browns, which is crazy that the Texans are hosting a playoff game. Never would
Yeah.
have seen that coming at the beginning of the year. Um, I'm I'm taking the Browns in this one. I just think this defense is too good not to win at least one playoff game. Um, I could see Stroud kind of just having a legacy game, but it feels like, sometimes it just feels like that's like the only way they could win, which just feels like, too much of a long shot there in a sense. So I'm gonna go with the Browns there. Um, yeah, I mean, I think this will be a pretty low scoring game. I don't see the Browns necessarily putting up a ton of points, obviously. But I also don't see the Texans doing that either. I could see, this feels like a Myles Garrett huge game. This feels like a, Jim Schwartz masterclass as a defensive coordinator. Just feels like a game that the Browns win, probably a close, low scoring game. So if I had to give a score prediction, I'd say like 20-14, 20-16, something like that. Um, Moving on to Chiefs Dolphins, the game tonight. This one is going to be brutal weather-wise. I believe like -30 real feel at kickoff. To be honest, I don't understand why they're moving this game or why they're moving the Bills game. I guess it's going to be super windy, so that's also dangerous, but this game feels equally dangerous in a way, so I'm not sure why they're moving one and not the other, but that, is what it is. Yeah, I got to be honest, that's the main reason I'm taking the Chiefs here. I think um I think they're much more accustomed to cold January football than the team from Miami. Um, you know, uh, we've seen the Chiefs and Mahomes grind it out in these types of games. We've seen them beat the Dolphins earlier this year. This defense is playing great, and I think their main key offensively is just running the football, leaning on Pacheco, some screens. Feels like Jerick McKinnon is the king of the postseason, like we always talk
Yes.
about. Um, I just I think the Chiefs, although I'm not necessarily taking them seriously as a contender, um, I I think they're gonna win this game at home. Um, and then to the now Monday at 4:30 game, um, Bills Steelers. This one's still going to be pretty brutal weather, would be my guess. Maybe not as bad as it was projected to be today. I think there's some potential for a Josh Allen disaster class because, like we talk about with the Bills often, it feels like everyone's hyping them up and then they have a pretty, bad loss. And then they kind of right the ship, but obviously this is a playoff, so there's no time to right the ship. Feels like the Steelers defense is going to come out, ready with something to prove. Kind of being, you know, their only hope in a sense. They made some moves on the back end. Obviously, Mason Rudolph starting again has weirdly worked out in a way. Um, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I think I do think there's a world where the Bills blow them out, so I get this spread, but 10.5 does feel like a lot of points. However, I still think the Bills win. They just have a pretty large, margin for error.
Yep.
Um, which also it's insane. The Bills were 6-6, and now they're the 2
I
seed. That's
know.
pretty
I was
wild.
gonna say that. Like crazy.
Um, yeah, that's insane. I'm gonna go with the Bills there. Monday night game. All right. I'm gonna like AJ Brown's out. I don't see the Eagles winning this game, man. I really don't. Uh maybe I'm going for the outside the arena curse. Um, but honestly, in my heart, I really don't believe the Eagles win this game. Just a sad, sad performance against the Giants.
That was crazy.
That was insane. That was heartbreaking to see. Um, yeah, AJ Brown gets hurt, fumbles, then Jalen
He
Hurts
loves a good
breaks a
fumble.
finger. Yeah, he loves a good
Brown is
fumble.
a
I mean,
great he's a great receiver, but that man fumbles more than any wide receiver I think I've ever seen.
it's incredible. It's incredible. Um, yeah, I don't want to talk about this game anymore. Then I'm gonna go, talk about Lions Rams. This is a Sunday. Whatever. I'll talk about that. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a game with a lot of storylines. Both quarterbacks played for the team for a while, were drafted by the team first overall that they're playing. Um, so that's, just very interesting to see. Um, both these teams pretty good offensively. The Rams have Aaron Donald. The Rams have the playoff experience. The Rams are kind of the hotter team in a way. The Rams have the more proven offensive coach. I trust Stafford more than I trust Goff. I'm gonna lean with the Lions, or sorry, but the Rams here. Um, they've just been playing super well, and I think the Lions are a good team. I could definitely see them winning this game, but it just doesn't feel like they're necessarily, good enough to where we can't consider them losing. They're only 3-point favorites, and I think I'm going to be looking at the Rams in this one. To be honest. Moving on to the Sunday 4:30 game. Um, Cowboys Packers. We've seen this matchup in the playoffs before, and everyone is hyping it up like, oh, the Packers own the Cowboys, the Packers own the Cowboys. Like, yes, but this is in Dallas where the Cowboys haven't lost this year, and there's no Aaron Rodgers on the Packers. So those are two pretty big differences there. Um, I could see I don't think the Cowboys beat the Niners in an NFC championship. We'll get more into that in a little bit. But I do think they probably make it there just with the way this is shaking up. Yeah, I think they're a better team than the Packers. Dak's playing really well. They have CeeDee Lamb. Packers are a good story, solid team, but ultimately this defense hasn't been great, and um, their offense may not even be able to keep up with the Cowboys as it is. So are we going? We're doing the whole thing, or
Yeah, whole thing.
okay, cool. Um, Ravens, Browns. I'm gonna take the Ravens here. I think the Ravens have a lot to prove. Obviously, every single team in the playoffs super wants to win, so it's not really about, who has
Yeah.
something to prove at this point. But, I think the Ravens are they're going to come out pissed off. They haven't been in the playoffs with Lamar in a while, which feels weird to say because every time Lamar's healthy, they're going to be probably a 10 plus win team. He's just one of those guys, and they're going to be at home. Their defense is, one of the few defenses that can say we're about as good as the Browns defense, and they just have so much more going on offense, especially at the quarterback position. I was Mark Andrews designated to return from practice,
He was, yeah.
so he could be back. I'm not sure how big of an effect that plays, but that's a possibility. At home, like I said, I just feel like the Ravens take care of this one. Bills, Chiefs. Wow. Every year it feels like these teams match up in the playoffs and everyone is taking the Bills. And honestly, I bet the Bills would be about three, no, probably more. They maybe be 6-point favorites, something like that. Based on the fact that they were 1-point favorites when they played in Kansas City.
Probably depends on how this round goes too.
Does definitely depend on how this round goes, but my guess would be the Bills would be favorites here. And the Bills are definitely the better team,
Yeah.
especially offensively. I just think they have more weapons. They have more guys you can throw to. Like, would Khalil Shakir not be like the number one target for the Chiefs? I mean, like, not the number one,
Yeah.
but he'd be like a clear third option or second option. Um,
Yeah.
which is insane given how much of an afterthought he is at times for the Bills. Um, I don't know. I have a feeling that the Chiefs would win this game. Um, I don't know. I kind of like I had convinced myself that there was no way the Chiefs were going to make a run this year. And now the way the board kind of fell, you get the Dolphins in a bad weather game, and I think that's a good matchup for them regardless. And then you get the Bills, who you've kind of owned in the playoffs. Mahomes seems
In
solid.
Buffalo though. This one would be in Buffalo, which I
This
think
one would
is
be in
would be interesting.
Buffalo. I think this is Mahomes' like first ever road playoff
Yeah,
game, right?
it is.
Um, so that could be interesting. I'm gonna go with the Chiefs here, kind of a gut feeling. Like I said, I think the Bills probably are a slightly better team. But I am gonna go, or at least a better offense. But I am gonna go with the Chiefs there. Niners, Rams. This would be a really fun matchup to get. I'd definitely be rooting for the Rams here, but I gotta go with the Niners. They're gonna be coming off an extra week of rest. They've looked like the best team all year. I just don't think this Rams defense is quite going to be able to, stop them enough so that, their offense can win them this game essentially. Cowboys, Buccaneers, Cowboys with the easiest path to a Mickey Mouse NFC championship. Um, yeah, I mean, I can't believe I think the Bucks are going to win a playoff game, but they are probably. If not, they'll probably play the Eagles, who might be even worse. So I think the Cowboys win this regardless. And then that sets up, my nightmare NFC championship game. Um, and I think the Niners take this one. I think I just think they're, better coach. I don't have worries about them fading in the playoffs. I think this defense is a little bit better than the Cowboys defense, especially the Cowboys on the road. Um, the Niners are really healthy. I think the Niners are, kind of a wagon right now, on both sides of the ball. So I'm taking them to go to the Super Bowl as much as I don't want to. Um, Ravens Chiefs. I mean, I'm going all chalk here, but I just think the Ravens and the Niners have really been the best
Yeah.
two teams. Um, you know, I kind of talked about how the Chiefs, in a way, would be lucky to be there in this point, and I think their defense would keep it close against the Ravens, but I just think, Kelsey hasn't looked as explosive. He's getting doubled and beat up on the line all the time, and he's still a very good player, but when you're the only option that can consistently get open, it's really tough. I mean, Rashee Rice gets like 14 targets a game because he's the only one that can get open besides Kelsey. And even he's not, this incredible. He's a rookie. I mean, he's a rookie. Like I think he's going to be a good player, but he's like the only guy that they can rely on besides Kelsey. It's a really tough situation to be in, as an offense. So Ravens, Niners. I think this would be a great game. I think what this comes down to in my mind is, Lamar Jackson's a game changer. And Purdy is a really, really good quarterback, but, not someone who you imagine making like these Mahomes plays or the plays that a Jalen Hurts made in the Super Bowl last year. Um, I mean, obviously, I've seen Nick Foles put on a Super Bowl masterclass, so anything is possible in a one game situation. And Purdy is obviously in a great situation, so he doesn't even necessarily need to play perfect. But I just think this just feels like the Lamar year, the Harbaugh year. That would obviously be a short storyline shoved down our throats that both the Harbaugh brothers won. Um, so I'm gonna go with the Ravens here. How many total points? Okay, I'm not gonna do that. So yeah, I mean, I did go pretty chalky overall. I've been talking for a while. My voice is starting to feel it, so I'm gonna pass it to you, Griffin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Dev. What are we doing here? We got to open the system preferences. Oh, we got to throw in the Touch ID. May not be able to record the contents of your screen until it is quit. What the hell's going on? I might need you to share for me,
Okay.
unless. Wait, no, it might work now. There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool, 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 cool. All right. Um, so Texans Browns first game of the playoffs should be a good game. I'm picking Cleveland. I mean, these two teams played. I know CJ Stroud wasn't playing. They played a few weeks ago, and Cleveland just rated them offensively. I do think it benefits Houston that they've played them. I think D'Amico Ryans will adjust. I think it's going to be a different game. But I do, when you were talking about the game, the one thing I disagree with is that, um, I think this Cleveland offense is actually pretty good and pretty efficient. They've got a really good offensive line, even with the injuries. They got the weapons. I mean, Amari Njoku has really come alive. The running committee, has done pretty well. And Flacco, seems to get these guys the ball. And Stefanski runs a really good scheme. It's funny that it took 38-year-old Joe Flacco. I don't know why this is going like this right now. Screen is just glitching. There we go. But it's funny that it took 38-year-old Joe Flacco for Stefanski's system to kind of really come into function. But alas, that's where we are. And I think this Browns defense ultimately is just going to be the best unit on the field. You know, those corners are elite. The pass rush is elite. I mean, everywhere you look is just elite talent. So I'm going to pick
Is
Cleveland.
Ward playing?
Yeah, he's playing, I think. He tweeted
Okay.
out some yeah, he should be playing.
Okay.
Regardless, I'll pick Cleveland even if Ward's not playing. I think they'll win this game. Um, Chiefs Dolphins, I'm picking the Chiefs. The weather is absolutely going to play a factor. Looking at Tua's stats in games of similar conditions, it's, I think it was like 4 picks, 4 touchdowns, something like that, like 50% completion percentage. So, he's a guy who played college football at Alabama. He's a guy who's played in Miami for the last few years. Like, this is not his comfortability. Tyreek Hill, on the other hand, played in Kansas City. I think he'll be ready to play. But Tua, I'm not sure. Is Jalen Waddle playing this game or no?
He's questionable. I'd assume he goes just because
Okay.
it's a playoff game, but
Yeah.
it's tough
But
to know.
regardless, this team is banged up. Bradley Chubb's out for the year. Jerome Baker's out for the year. Like, it feels like the injuries have just piled up with this team. Kansas City at home, Patrick Mahomes, I just don't see them losing. Bills at Steelers, I don't even think this is going to be a competitive game. TJ Watt's out. Um, you know, the Steelers offense has been all right with Mason. Um, maybe, I shouldn't say that. It could be a close game. The Steelers have a really good defense. They've started to run the ball really well with Najee and Jalen Warren. It's a great, great duo, one of the better running back duos in the league. Um, Najee really came together at the end of the season. He really started putting together a strong year. So, yeah, I'll go with the Bills, though. I just think at home, weather I don't think will be as much of a factor in, favoring one team because obviously Pittsburgh's not, necessarily the warmest place on the country, but, I'll pick Buffalo. Moving along, I'm picking your Eagles. I just, maybe I'm in denial. I mean, you've been kind of right the last few weeks when talking about the Eagles and saying, this team is not good. And I don't think by any means this team is going to make the Super Bowl. Their flaws have clearly been exposed. The defense is kind of a mess. I think they've kind of put too much of their hopes into these kind of big names on defense, like the Kevin Byards, the Shaq Leonards, and it's just, you know, they're just not it at the moment. But I really, the Bucks just beat the Panthers 9-0 with their season on the line. Like, I'm just not moved by them. Um, Maybe a Baker Mayfield masterclass. They do have the weapons where this could get ugly for Philly, but I just see them winning. We'll see. Jalen Hurts' injury could play in a factor. I guess AJ Brown is out. The more that I think about it, I'm like, shit, the Bucks might win this game. Um, yeah, I don't know, man. I'll pick the Eagles. I just think they're too good. Maybe I'm riding the hype from last year and just getting caught up in the big names as well, but I just think they are too good. I think the quarterback difference will be, shown in this game, illustrated in this game. So I'll pick the Eagles. I'm picking the Rams as well. I just think this Rams offense is so elite. I think Matt Stafford is definitely the better quarterback in this game. Jared Goff's very good, but not that turnovers are an issue. I think he's improved upon it over the past few years, but he's turned the ball over a bit this year. Kind of feels like the Lions. I know they probably should have won that Cowboys game, but they haven't been the greatest team in these big games. They do, they've got weapons. I mean, Amon-Ra, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta. It seems like he'll play, but maybe not. I mean, he's definitely not going to be 100%, which is big. He's been such a star for them this year. I believe second team All Pro, which is crazy as a rookie, especially a tight end. And I just think the Rams, they've kind of got that championship caliber to them. You've got the pieces from that team. You've got Matt Stafford. You've got Cooper Kupp. You've got Aaron Donald. That's a big difference, I think, between these two teams. I just feel like there's more championship caliber. And that offense, I mean, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Kyron Williams, I mean, it's really tough to stop. And, when Williams has been in the lineup and healthy, this Rams team has been really dominant offensively. And, the storyline, I was watching, I think it was Big Cat. Barstool was saying, Lions fans, it seems like they go through, every possible worst scenario you could think of, they go through. And like they've been through everything, but like Matt Stafford, first home playoff game in a gazillion years, your former quarterback, your, best player in franchise history almost. Barry Sanders, I shouldn't say that. One of the best franchise players in franchise history comes back and beats you at home. It just feels like it's too picture perfect. Um, Hell of a job for the Rams, regardless of what happens. Hell of a season, and same goes to the Packers. But their season will be ending in Dallas. Um, you know, I just think the Cowboys are, you know, they're a really good football team. Can they win a championship? We'll see based on my predictions. But at home, like you said, they haven't lost. CeeDee Lamb, it feels like is just kind of one of those unstoppable players right now in the league. And this season's a huge success for the Packers, regardless. This feels like a rebuilding team. You know, they've got a bunch of not highly drafted receivers. You got these guys, Bo Melton. Obviously, Romeo Dobbs has been there. Christian Watson's been out. Jaden Reed's been a stuff for them. Like, they've really come together. It's going to be really exciting to see how this team goes. Jair Alexander has been really funny. That viral clip of him on the news station was amazing. The pack is back. We back. That was sick. I almost want to pick them because of that, but I won't.
I was sick.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go Cowboys there and sticking to the NFC side. I'm picking them against the Eagles. These teams have played twice. They split. I think a trilogy would be great. I think another Cowboys Eagles matchup would be fun, but the Eagles are just in a rough spot right now. I think defensively, I think Dak would be able to as we've seen this year, Cowboys have had success offensively against Philly. And it just doesn't feel like this is a game that Philly would go win, although maybe it is with the Cowboys' success. All this Philly, struggles, they go out, get it together for the playoffs, go into Jerry's world and beat the Cowboys. I think Mike McCarthy would surely be fired if that happened. But yeah, I'm gonna pick the Cowboys. I'm also picking the Niners, like you. Um, they're just a wagon. I mean, they're just so good, and they've played the Rams twice this year. I think they've beat the Rams both times, I believe. I might be wrong, but I think they're 2-0 against the Rams this year. Um,
Yeah, I mean, no one played their starters last week.
oh, did they play last week
Yeah,
and the Rams won?
I don't remember who won, but it didn't matter.
Let's see. Now I'm curious. They did win by 1 point.
Yeah,
So Carson Wentz,
Carson
there's
Wentz.
your
Yeah,
guy, Dev. He carried the ball 17 times.
yeah.
That's insane. That is
I
flat
literally
out
made a note in
insane.
my head to bring that up because that is hilarious. I don't know how that happened.
Insane. Yeah, Sam Darnold. I mean, what a battle. A battle of the Gingers. Sticking with the NFC, I'll just go through. I'm picking the Niners as well. At home, it feels like they've owned Dallas in the playoffs these last few years, and I just think they. I mean, we say it 100 times. They're just stacked. They're stacked. They're stacked, and they just are. I mean, at the end of the day, Purdy beat them last year in the playoffs. I believe that was last year, right, where they had Zeke line up at center. Yeah, that shit was wild. That would have been my favorite play in NFL history.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think the Niners are too good. I think you've got Kittle, you got Debo, you got CMC, and the defense speaks for itself. So I'm not going to talk about it. Niners. Going over to the AFC, as much as it pains me to do this, I am going to pick the Ravens. I think it'll be a good game. And I'm very, the Joe Flacco storyline I think would be fun here. He returns to Baltimore, wins a playoff game against his old team. That would be really fun. But I think the Ravens are probably just too good, although the Browns did beat them earlier in the year, albeit with Deshaun Watson. But I think it'd be a good game, but I will pick the Ravens. And then I'm also picking the Chiefs. I know our brackets are like basically identical. I think we do this every year at some point, it feels like, and you just start sleeping on Patrick Mahomes, and that's when he comes up and bites it and just runs his team to the Super Bowl. I just don't like picking against Patrick Mahomes. I really don't. He's so good. I think this offense is just going to figure it out. I really do. These two teams did play earlier in the year, like you talked about. It was a very close game. So the Chiefs, it's not like the Bills blew them out or anything. It's a close game. At Buffalo definitely favors them, but I think the Chiefs you just got to lean on Pacheco, I think, and then Kelsey. You know, this is where he shines in the playoffs in the big moment. That's where he has his whole career. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of spotlight on him, so now is the time for this guy to, I know he's frustrated. You listen to his podcast, he's feels like he's playing very poorly, which compared to what we're used to, I think is accurate. Um, so it wouldn't shock me to see Travis Kelsey kind of just light it up for these two first games. Um, so I'll pick the Chiefs, and I'm gonna roll with the same Super Bowl as you, Dev. It kind of feels like one of those years where, you know, it could be a chalk. It could be chalk. It could be Ravens 49ers, both one seeds. I think this would just be the point where the Chiefs, I don't think they'd be able to string these three wins together in a row. In Baltimore, it feels like Lamar is, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like Lamar has fared pretty well against Mahomes in his career. I feel like the Ravens, I don't know. They have some good matchups over the years, I know for sure. And yeah, I just think, like you mentioned, this offense is super good. Obviously, their defense, all pro caliber players left and right. So really good team. And for the Super Bowl, I'm going to pick the 49ers. I know these two teams played earlier in the year. Ravens blew them out. But, I think the 49ers will adjust. I think that was Brock Purdy's worst game of his career, albeit, the Ravens defense is very good. That they do that to some quarterbacks, but also you got to look at it. There were some tip passes. There were some, deflections. Like some of those interceptions weren't necessarily 100% on Purdy. There were some bad throws, no doubt. But I think Brock Purdy will step up, play a better game. And I think this 49ers team, they've been so close for so many years. It feels like with this core, it's kind of remarkable. They haven't won a Super Bowl with them. And I guess you point to the quarterback position when they've been rolling out Jimmy G and, now Mr. Irrelevant, who obviously has proved himself to be a pretty good player. But, I think this team finally gets through this year, wins their first Super Bowl. I think it's just at the end of the day, this team is too talented. We talk about it, the superstars. And I think ultimately, this would be a fun rematch of that, Super Bowl from, I don't even know, 2012, 2013 between Flacco and Colin Kaepernick. But I do think the Niners pull it out, and that is my bracket. Very similar. I think I only predicted two different games than you, but which probably means the bracket is going to be totally. God knows what's going to happen in the NFL playoffs. But before we end things, I want to talk about some coaching moves in the NFL. Obviously, a lot of guys like Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, obviously the big three. Some teams still searching for vacancies. Seems like Ben Johnson of the Lions will probably get a job at some point after the Lions get eliminated. Antonio Pierce, I saw reports today that it seems like he's the favorite for the Raiders job. Jim Harbaugh, I think, is going to interview at the Chargers. So, I mean, there is so much talent on this coaching market this year. But obviously, I think, the news of basically on back-to-back days of Vrabel, Pete Carroll, and Belichick shocked a lot of people. So your thoughts on, those and kind of, just what you kind of see going on with this coaching market. If you have any predictions or, your thoughts just overall on kind of what we saw this past week.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, as an Eagles fan, it kind of makes me want to, lose a little bit. Maybe you fire Sirianni, maybe you bring in a Belichick or a Harbaugh or a Ben Johnson. But I'll go one by one. I mean, with Carroll, it's like I don't think he was a bad coach, but I also don't think you were winning a Super Bowl with him and this core, so I get it. Um a bit unceremonious to kind of fire a 72-year-old franchise legend, but it's the NFL, man. These teams are pretty desperate. So I get it. Vrabel, I think this was a big mistake, to be honest.
Yeah.
You have one bad year where you're riddled with injuries and the team isn't very talented, and it's like you let a guy go after being, considered a top 10 coach.
Yeah.
Just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. I guess maybe they want an offensive coach to pair with Levis. I didn't get that one. Belichick, man, Belichick's the GOAT. He's been getting a lot of hate recently. Brady carried him and, stuff like that. But, first of all, he's the best defensive coordinator of all time. There's no question in my mind. Developed Lawrence Taylor, won multiple Super Bowls with the great Giants defense. And then he won 6 Super Bowls with the Patriots, where they were basically a top 10 defense every year, including this year. The GM Belichick started to catch up to the head coach. He never drafted the best, but he drafted guys he could develop, and that's what mattered. And he drafted the best quarterback of all time. I mean, like, why are people holding that against him? This guy is, the best coach in the NFL history. Certainly the best coach I've ever seen in my life, probably in any sport.
Yep.
I think he's going to have a Brady type arc as well, where he probably goes to a contender that's really just one piece away. And I think he wins the Super Bowl and goes out on top. That's just my gut feeling. Obviously it's really hard to win a Super Bowl, but the man's done it 6 times. I'm excited to see where he goes. Hoping not Dallas. Really hoping not Dallas. But it's going to be really interesting to see. And then Harbaugh, I think he's going to go to the Chargers, but that's kind of up in the air. I think Antonio Pierce is the right move for the Raiders. I do. I think you just kind of needed a guy.
Yeah.
Guy the players want to play for, a guy that's not Josh McDaniels. I just think you're not screwing it up, and if you want to fire him after 1 year, you can.
Yeah.
If you find a better candidate next year. So those are my thoughts on the coaching carousel, so to speak. I guess my last thought is Brian Johnson getting interviews is actually just so comical. I mean, the guy is not a good coach. Is the NFL seeing what's happening to the Eagles and not thinking like, wow, they're poorly coached? Like, I feel like it's so obvious, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but that's it. Those are my thoughts on the coaching carousel. I'm excited to see how this goes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you covered it pretty well. Antonio Pierce seems like the right move. I mean, I think Rappaport put out a report today that, Max Crosby would request a trade or something like that if they didn't hire Pierce, which is just speaks to the volumes of, the respect Pierce has in that locker room. And that defense really came around, the second half of the season. So I think the future is bright in Vegas with Pierce, assuming he gets the job. I agree. Vrabel, I thought that was a really bad decision. I'm super high on Mike Vrabel. I think, he just seems like a player's coach. I think he's kind of tough nosed, which is kind of what you need sometimes, and just gets, he never has had the most talented teams in Tennessee, and seeing what that team accomplished under him, is super impressive. And, I mean, they have Ryan Tannehill as their quarterback, like a second stint Ryan Tannehill, and they, made runs as like 1 seeds and whatnot. I mean, it was really impressive. I know this year, I think talent was an issue. They were injured. But look at what they did week 18. I mean, they played the Jaguars, whose season was on the line. They could win the division, and they kicked the shit out of them. I mean, like, how do you not see that and go, okay, this guy gets his team ready to play? Sure, if you see, if you're thinking of firing him and the Titans get rolled over, they lose by like 20, 30 points, and there's just no effort. The Jaguars win the division. I get it, maybe a little bit more, but seeing the way the Titans fought week 18 and then going and firing your coach, I think it's just idiotic. You hear also the owner saying, like, yeah, we probably could have traded him and gotten some value, but, we just didn't feel like doing that. And, we felt it'd be easier if we just released him or fired him. And it's just like, I get it. Like, if there's a candidate you really want, you don't want to lose out on him. But, like, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like a poorly run organization right now. They had a guy it felt like that people wanted to play for, and that people there were excited to stay and keep playing for. And now it kind of feels like who knows what the deal is going to be in Tennessee. I don't know who they're going to hire as their next head coach. Um, Harbaugh is interesting. I don't know. I've gone so back and forth. It felt like he wanted to go to the NFL for so long, and now like it seems like, he wins the natty. It's, I think it would be mutual on both sides if he kind of departs, but like part of me thinks he'll stay in Michigan. I think he really does like it there. I think, obviously there's been a lot of outside noise, which I think is kind of what's probably deterring him more to the NFL, if anything. Um, I don't know. I just think, Michigan, I think will come with a big enough offer to where he'll probably entertain it and really highly consider staying. I think if it's not the Chargers, it's 100% staying at Michigan. I don't think he's going to end up anywhere else. Um, and then Belichick, like you said, the GOAT. Definitely, there's been a weird narrative these last few years, which I don't love. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I feel like I kind of spit out the narrative sometimes. And I think it's fair. I think, and you heard Robert Kraft say it, like, Bill told me Brady couldn't play anymore. And then he goes and wins the Super Bowl. Like, Tom Brady was Tom Brady. But at the end of the day, like, you know, who made Tom Brady Tom Brady? Like, Bill Belichick was a key reason for that. And, they are very complimentary, and people shouldn't forget that. He's obviously the GOAT coach. I agree with what you're saying. Like, if he ends up on one of these really talented teams and just, you know, gets in the playoffs, like, it could be one of those storybook endings for Belichick as well. I just don't know where he ends up, though, if I'm being honest. Like, I think Dallas, if they fire McCarthy, that feels like the landing spot. But, like, the Chargers seem to be rumored for a while, but if they go with Harbaugh, then I'm just like, well, where is he going to go? Like, would Seattle? I don't think Seattle would be a spot he ends up. I don't feel like the Commanders. It seems like they're not really like focused on him. The Titans, it doesn't make sense to me. Um, I don't know. Like, I don't know where he would end up. I
You
don't know
know
if
where
you
he'd
have any
end up.
thoughts. The the Eagles is what you're saying.
That's my gut feeling right now.
Interesting. But what if the Eagles, you know, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, the playoffs obviously have to unfold.
That's true.
The
That's very
Cow
true.
at the Cowboys, if the Cowboys lose tomorrow, I think Bill Belichick is the next coach of the Dallas
Yeah,
Cowboys.
agreed.
Um, so it's tough to say with Belichick. I guess we needed the playoffs to unfold. It doesn't feel like he's going to take one of these jobs like a Commanders or a Titans or a Seahawks. So
Yeah.
I think it's probably maybe Chargers and then maybe one of these teams in the playoffs if they move on from their coach. I thought Vrabel would end up in New England too. Obviously, I think they like Gerard
Me too.
Mayo a lot. And it seems like that plan was kind of in place for a while, but a little surprised they didn't go with Vrabel. But alas, we'll talk about all the coaching changes more kind of as they happen, obviously. But anything else to add, or you want to wrap this one up?
No, I'm ready to go.
All right, you can do the honors, my friend.
Oh wow. Thank you. I hope everyone enjoyed a bit of a shorter episode this week, probably about an hour. Both of us a bit under the weather, like we talked about, fighting through to push out America's #1 sports podcast.
100%.
I don't know why I'm so mean to us. Um, but um, you know, I think this was a good episode. I think it was just good to, like a lot of stuff happened this week, obviously. Good to
Yeah.
make some predictions for the playoffs. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already at this point. And yeah, we'll see you next week.